Welcome, traveler. We're glad you're here. Every story you hear is made with care and passion. If you enjoy it, please like, subscribe, and check out the other adventures waiting for you on our channel. Your support means the world. Thank you. The Central Command Plaza teemed with citizens assembled for the mandatory anniversary celebration. Massive holographic displays loomed over the crowd, showing a countdown to the Supreme Patriot's address. Loyalty enforcement officers patrolled the perimeter, their expressions unreadable behind reflective helmets. Deep beneath the plaza, in a forgotten maintenance tunnel that had once served the Washington metro system, Ariana led a small team toward the broadcast center. The neural suppressor crown she wore protected her from identification scanners, allowing her to move through restricted areas undetected. Status update, she subvocalized, activating the quantum communication link that connected Foundation operatives. Neural synthesis complete for all 7 council members, came Vance's reply directly into Ariana's mind. Quantum override signal steady at 97% coverage. Temporary neural suppressors have been distributed to all Foundation cells. And the broadcast interception. Ready. Once we have control of the central node, we can override every feed in the Alliance. Elias walked beside Ariana, his young face set with determination. Unlike the adults around him, he had never known a world without constant surveillance, without loyalty scores and thought compliance. Yet he had instantly understood the stakes when Ariana's message had reached him. "Are you ready?" she asked him. The boy nodded. "My whole life, I felt something was wrong, like everyone was playing a part in a story they didn't write. When I accessed those historical files, it was like finally seeing in color after a lifetime of gray." "What you're about to do is dangerous," Ariana warned. "Even with the neural monitoring systems disabled, there will be those who choose to defend the regime." "My father explained the risks," Elias replied. "He also said sometimes the right thing to do is the dangerous thing." They reached a secure door marked with the insignia of the Information Ministry's broadcast division. Thomas Morgan Woodard, Elias's father and their inside man, was waiting. "We have 12 minutes until the anniversary broadcast begins," Thomas said, scanning his access card. "The technical team has been evacuated due to a containment breach in the ventilation system." "Any complications?" Ariana asked as they entered the facility. "Minor resistance from the shift supervisor, but he's secured in a storage closet." The quantum override affected most of the staff's implants, but some were using an experimental next-generation version with enhanced shielding. The broadcast center was a marvel of technological control, a circular room dominated by a central holographic projection well surrounded by monitoring stations. From here, the regime controlled every bit of information that reached the citizens of the unified sovereign alliance. "This is where they craft the daily reality for 300 million people," Thomas explained, activating the main console. "The Supreme Patriot's anniversary address has been pre-recorded and enhanced. They stopped doing live appearances 5 years ago when the AI representation began showing signs of degradation." On the main screen appeared the familiar face of Dan Lupmot, or rather, the artificial intelligence construct that had replaced him after his death. The image was perfect, indistinguishable from a living human to the casual observer. But to Ariana's enhanced perception, the legacy of her neural synthesis, the subtle flaws were evident, micro-expressions that didn't quite follow natural patterns, a rhythmic quality to the speech that betrayed its algorithmic origin. "Can you access the raw feed?" she asked. Thomas nodded, typing a series of commands. "The regime's technicians have been adding increasingly complex filters to mask the AI's degradation. I'm disabling them now." The image on the screen flickered, the perfect representation of Lupmot giving way to something far more disturbing, a digital approximation struggling to maintain human appearance. Parts of the face lagged, expressions changed with unnatural abruptness, and occasionally the entire image seemed to distort before reconstructing itself. "This is what they've been hiding," Thomas said grimly. "The AI that supposedly houses the Supreme Patriot's consciousness is breaking down. The computational demands of simulating a human mind exceeded their technological capabilities decades ago. It's been entirely pre-programmed responses for at least 15 years, Ariana added, drawing on Julia's memories. A sophisticated script, not a conscious entity." The broadcast begins in 8 minutes, Thomas reminded them. We'll let it run until the glitches become obvious to everyone, then Elias makes his announcement. Once the citizens see the truth about their immortal leader, we broadcast the historical files to every neural feed in the Alliance. Ariana placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. Remember, you don't need to say much. The truth speaks for itself. Just introduce yourself and explain that the people have been deceived. The boy nodded, studying the script they had prepared, simple, direct words that would shatter 50 years of carefully constructed mythology. As the final minutes ticked away, Ariana connected to the quantum communication link. All Foundation cells, prepare for Phase 2. When the broadcast occurs, move immediately to secure your designated objectives. Reminder: minimum force, maximum visibility. Across the Alliance, thousands of operatives waited in position near government buildings, broadcast facilities, security headquarters, and other crucial infrastructure. The plan wasn't to seize power through violence, that would only replace one authoritarian system with another. Instead, they sought to create a power vacuum that could only be filled through democratic processes. 1 minute to broadcast, Thomas announced. On the surface, the assembled crowds watched as the giant holographic displays lit up with the regime's insignia, a stylized eagle clutching arrows in one talon and surveillance devices in the other. Loyalty enforcement officers stood at attention, unaware that their neural implants were no longer connected to central command. The familiar fanfare played, a bombastic theme composed specifically for regime ceremonies. Then, the distorted image of Dan Lupmot appeared before the multitude. Citizens of the Unified Sovereign Alliance, the AI construct began, its voice momentarily slipping into unnatural cadences before the correction algorithms adjusted. Today we celebrate 50 glorious years since I saved our nation from the chaos of democracy. Even with the regime's filters partially disabled, the broadcast initially appeared normal to most viewers. But 30 seconds in, the degradation became impossible to conceal. The image froze momentarily, then continued with the Ari's face noticeably asymmetrical. Under my perfect guidance, it continued, one eye now significantly larger than the other, we have eliminated poverty by redefining economic metrics. The voice skipped, repeating, redefining economic metrics, throughout the crowd. Confusion spread. Citizens looked at one another uncertainly. This wasn't the flawless supreme patriot they were accustomed to seeing. The image deteriorated further, pixels scrambling across the face as the AI struggled to maintain coherence. Enemies of the state have been eliminated through my infinite wisdom and perfectly stable genius mind, which is the best mind with the best thoughts. In the broadcast center, Thomas nodded to his son. Now. Elias stepped forward as Thomas executed the override command. The distorted image of Lupmot disappeared, replaced by the earnest face of a 16-year-old boy standing in a broadcast facility clearly not meant for public view. Citizens of what was once the United States of America, Elias began, his voice steady despite the enormity of the moment. My name is Elias Morgan Woodard. What you just witnessed was the breakdown of an artificial intelligence program, not a living leader. Dan Lupmot has been dead for 30 years. You have been ruled by a computer program and the corrupt officials who maintain it. Throughout Central Command Plaza, gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Security officers looked to their commanders for instructions, but with their neural implants disconnected from central authority, no orders came. For 50 years, you have been lied to about your history, Elias continued. The regime has controlled not just your actions but your thoughts, through neural implants that monitor and influence your brain activity. But today, those implants have been temporarily disabled. For the next 12 hours, your thoughts are truly your own. Thomas activated the second phase of the broadcast, sending the complete historical archives directly to every neural feed and information terminal in the Alliance. Citizens stood transfixed as images of the past flowed into their minds, the true history of their nation, the rise of authoritarianism, the systematic dismantling of democratic institutions. I am the descendant of the last freely elected president, Elias explained. And I stand before you with a simple truth: you were not meant to be controlled. You were meant to be citizens, not subjects. The Unified Sovereign Alliance was built on the foundations of a democracy, a system where power flows from the people to the government, not from the government to the people. In the command center, Ariana monitored communications from Foundation cells throughout the alliance. Reports flooded in, regime officials fleeing their posts, security forces standing down, citizens gathering in public spaces, talking freely for the first time in decades. "The transition is proceeding better than we anticipated," she told Thomas. "With the neural implants disabled and the truth spreading, the regime's control structure is collapsing." "What about resistance?" he asked. "Minimal. Most high-level officials are surrendering without conflict. They've known the AI was failing and have been positioning themselves for the inevitable power struggle. Our intervention caught them off guard." On screen, Elias had been joined by Councillor Vance, who was explaining the formation of a transitional council to guide the restoration of democratic governance. "This is not a coup," she emphasized. "We are not seizing power, we are returning it to its rightful owners, the citizens." For the next 6 months, a transitional council composed of historians, legal scholars, and ethicists will oversee the dismantling of authoritarian structures and the establishment of a constitutional convention. Thomas turned to Ariana. "It's time for the final revelation. Are you ready?" She nodded, stepping into view of the broadcast cameras. As she appeared on screen, a ripple of recognition passed through the older citizens watching the broadcast, those who had lived through the early days of the regime and might remember images of Julia Chen, the constitutional lawyer who had opposed Lupmot's power grab. "My name is Dr. Ariana Chen," she began. "I am both myself and, through the miracle of quantum consciousness synthesis, the carrier of my grandmother's memories and knowledge. Julia Chen opposed the overthrow of constitutional governance 50 years ago. She, along with 6 other scholars and leaders, preserved their consciousness patterns before they were captured by the regime. She explained the Foundation, its long mission of preservation, and the plan for restoration. We do not seek retribution against those who served the regime. Many did so under the influence of neural control or out of genuine belief in its necessity. What matters now is not punishment but reconstruction, the careful, deliberate rebuilding of democratic institutions that serve the people rather than control them." As she spoke, reports continued to flow in from across the alliance. In city after city, citizens were emerging from their homes, gathering in public spaces that had been used only for mandatory loyalty demonstrations for decades. Security forces, freed from neural control, were largely standing down or even joining the citizens they had once monitored. "Today marks not an ending but a beginning," Ariana continued. "The work of rebuilding will be difficult. Democracy is not perfect, it is messy, contentious, and requires constant maintenance. But it is built on a fundamental truth, that human beings deserve freedom. Not the illusory freedom of consumer choice within authorized parameters, but true freedom to think, to speak, to gather, to challenge authority without fear of reprisal." She looked directly into the camera, channeling both her own passion and Julia's hard-won wisdom. "The road ahead will not be easy. 50 years of authoritarian rule have left deep scars on our society. Some will resist change. Others will seek to exploit the transition for personal gain. But for the first time in generations, we face these challenges together, not as isolated individuals afraid to speak freely, but as citizens united by a common purpose." In the central command plaza, the crowd that had assembled for a mandatory celebration of tyranny was transforming before their eyes into something the regime had feared above all else, an engaged citizenry. People were talking animatedly, sharing their suddenly unfiltered thoughts, forming impromptu discussion groups. Elias stepped forward once more. "In the historical archives being transmitted to your neural feeds and information terminals, you'll find the original Constitution of the United States, the document that formed the foundation of the democracy that preceded the Unified Sovereign Alliance. Study it. Debate it. Consider how it might be adapted to meet the challenges of our time. In 6 months, representatives from every community will gather to draft a new constitution, one that preserves the best of the past while addressing the realities of the present." The broadcast continued for hours as members of the Foundation explained different aspects of the transition plan, answered questions submitted by citizens, and provided guidance for communities suddenly freed from centralized control. Throughout it all, Ariana stood ready to draw on Julia's constitutional expertise, explaining complex concepts of governance in accessible terms. As evening fell, Ariana stepped away from the broadcast center to join Vance on the roof of the facility. From this vantage point, they could see across Central Command Plaza, where thousands of citizens remained, forming discussion circles illuminated by the soft glow of information terminals. "I never thought I'd see this day," Vance said softly. "Even when we planned for it, prepared for it, a part of me believed the regime was too entrenched to ever fall." "It hasn't fully fallen yet," Ariana cautioned. "There will be resistance. Some will cling to the certainty of authoritarianism rather than embrace the responsibility of freedom. But the neural monitoring system is permanently disabled. The quantum override corrupted the central control algorithms beyond repair." "True. But control isn't just technological, it's psychological. 50 years of conditioning won't disappear overnight." Vance nodded, understanding. "That's why the Transitional Council's first priority is education, not indoctrination, but true learning. History, civics, ethics. The tools citizens need to govern themselves." "And the neural implants?" Ariana asked. "The removal process begins tomorrow. We've reproposed the medical facilities that installed them to begin extractions, prioritizing children and young adults." They stood in silence for a moment, watching as, in the plaza below, someone began singing an old song, one that had been banned for decades but somehow preserved in cultural memory. Others joined in hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. "There will be chaos," Vance said eventually. "Disorder. Mistakes. The regime maintained stability through control." "Yes," Ariana agreed. "Democracy is inherently unstable, that's its strength. It adapts, evolves, corrects course through the collective wisdom of its citizens." She smiled, feeling Julia's memories reinforce her own conviction. "My grandmother used to say that democracy isn't a fixed state, it's a continuous process of becoming." 6 months later, Ariana stood at the back of the Constitutional Convention Hall, formerly the Supreme Patriots' Palace of Unity, now reproposed as a center for democratic governance. 500 delegates from communities across the former Unified Sovereign Alliance filled the chamber, engaged in spirited debate over the draft constitution. Elias found her there, now nearly 17 and carrying himself with the confidence of someone who had helped change the course of history. "The Education Committee has approved the new history curriculum," he reported. "Factually accurate but not vengeful, focused on understanding how democracy fell so we can ensure it never happens again." "And the neural implant removal program?" 87% complete. The remaining citizens are mostly elderly who fear the extraction process. The council has agreed they can keep their deactivated implants if they choose." Ariana nodded approval. Freedom includes the right to make choices others might not understand. On the convention floor, a heated discussion was underway about the structure of the new government. Some delegates argued for a completely redesigned system, others advocated returning to the original constitutional model with modern adaptations. "They've been at it for hours," Elias observed. "In the old system, this would have been resolved with a simple directive from above." "Yes," Ariana agreed. "Authoritarianism is efficient in the short term. Democracy is messy, slow, and frustrating, and infinitely more durable because it accommodates human complexity rather than suppressing it." She felt Julia's memories stir within her, recollections of similar debates during the framing of legal arguments, the careful balancing of competing interests that characterized true democratic governance. The neural synthesis had stabilized over time, allowing her to access her grandmother's knowledge while maintaining her own distinct identity. "The Foundation's underground headquarters has been converted to a museum," Elias said. "The quantum consciousness technology is being studied by scientists who believe it might have medical applications, helping trauma victims recover lost memories, treating degenerative brain conditions." "And the Oracle system?" "Decommissioned, as the Council directed. The remaining consciousness patterns were offered the opportunity for synthesis with compatible descendants. 3 accepted, 2 declined, preferring to have their patterns preserved in the historical archive but not activated." Ariana nodded thoughtfully. The ethical questions surrounding consciousness preservation and synthesis were complex, with no easy answers. That these questions could be openly debated, that citizens could disagree without fear of reprisal, was perhaps the clearest sign that democracy had begun to take root once more. From the convention floor came a burst of applause. A consensus had been reached on one of the most contentious articles, the limits of executive power. The new constitution would feature multiple, overlapping constraints on authority, designed to prevent the concentration of control that had enabled Lupmot's rise. "They're making progress," Elias observed. "Yes," Ariana agreed. "Not perfect progress, there's no such thing. But genuine progress." In the month since the fall of the regime, she had watched as communities across the former alliance grappled with their newfound freedom. There had been disorder, as expected. Conflicts had erupted as long-suppressed grievances surfaced. But there had also been remarkable moments of cooperation, of citizens organizing to address local needs without waiting for central authority to direct them. The neural implants, once removed, had left people with a heightened awareness of their own thought processes. Many reported experiencing emotions more vividly, connecting with others more authentically. The regime had dampened not just dissent but the full range of human experience, the intensity of both joy and sorrow that came with genuine freedom. "The Council has asked me to continue as an advisor after the Constitution is ratified," Ariana told Elias. "But I've declined. Power needs to transfer fully to the elected representatives." "What will you do instead?" She smiled. "Return to teaching history, the real history this time." The foundation preserved not just facts but context, helping us understand how democracy functions when it's healthy and how it fails when it's neglected. On the convention floor, the delegates had moved on to discussing the Bill of Rights, the fundamental protections that would prevent future encroachments on individual liberty. The right to privacy, freedom of thought, protection from surveillance, guarantees against forced medical procedures, including neural implantation. "They're building something better than what was lost," Elias observed. "Not just restoring the past but learning from its failures." "That's the true power of historical knowledge," Ariana replied. "Not nostalgia for a mythical golden age, but clear-eyed understanding of both achievements and mistakes." As the sun set outside the convention hall, its light streaming through the newly installed windows that had replaced the regime's oppressive blank walls, Ariana felt Julia's presence within her mind, not as an intrusion but as a partner in witnessing this moment of rebirth. In the plaza outside, citizens gathered as they did each evening now, not by compulsion but by choice, coming together to discuss the day's developments, to debate the shape of their collective future. Children played in spaces once reserved for military parades, their laughter a form of freedom that needed no constitutional protection. Democracy had not been restored in a day. The work of rebuilding would continue for years, perhaps generations. But the foundations had been laid, constructed from both the wisdom of the past and the determination of those who had lived under tyranny and vowed never to return to it. As night fell, the Constitutional Convention Hall remained illuminated, a beacon visible across the city. Inside, the debate continued, passionate but respectful, 500 diverse voices working toward consensus without surrendering their distinct perspectives. It was messy. It was inefficient. It was, Ariana thought with profound gratitude, exactly as it should be.